Hi, I am Devonna Robinson. I am the CEO of Timothy D. Robinson Foundation. I created this foundation in honor of my husband who passed away from pulmonary fibrosis. I just want to tell you a little bit about his story. Timothy was diagnosed with pulmonary fibrosis in 2005. We met about 2010, which at that time he was not on oxygen yet. He was pretty much living a healthy life. Pulmonary fibrosis basically is a lung disease that can happen whether it's airborne, it could be allergies, it could be genetic. There's so many causes of how you can actually contract pulmonary fibrosis. It's a lung disease that actually scars your lungs, and it is basically is a struggle for you to breathe with this disease. There's no cure for it. They basically give you medications to kind of slow down the process. So back in 2010, me and Timothy met. We were both volunteering for CASA, which is a child abuse awareness foundation. We began talking in our relationship, and he ended up sharing with me that he was diagnosed with pulmonary fibrosis in 2005. And later on down the road, he began to have flu-like symptoms, was coughing, struggling to breathe, basically just trying to live with it. He wanted to hold off with having his transplant because he wanted to get his master's degree. He had a whole list of goals and things that he wanted to do with his life. So we fought it. He went to pulmonary rehab. He was on steroids. He had multiple doctor's appointments, hospital visits, hospital stays. Like, it was an ongoing process of him battling and struggling with this disease. Around 2017 is when he was starting to go through his chronic lung rejection. At that point, that's where you on 24-hour oxygen. You really can't function. You can't do the basic things that we take for granted. Showering, putting on clothes, me getting him in the car, basically couldn't walk for a long distance. I would have to push him in the wheelchair. It was a struggle, but it was also a lot of good times too. During his times where he was just trying to push through it, he would try to get on the treadmill, which treadmill does open up your airwaves, so that would just force him to be able to breathe better than what he was like earlier throughout the day. He also received massages, which helps open up his lungs, his air capacity as well, where he can function throughout the day. He used to love to cook. So even sometimes seasoning, him trying to fry something would irritate his lungs as well. So that was also a struggle for him, but that's what he enjoyed doing. Barbecuing, anything is of that nature that he used to prior enjoy started to become a struggle. So then I took on the responsibility of actually finally learning how to cook. But in that time, some days when he did feel good, he would get up and cook breakfast. He would cook lunch, sometimes dinner, because he wanted to do his part, of course, in the house as much as he possibly could. In 2017 is when they actually called him for his first double lung transplant. I will say that for him, he only was in the hospital for 2 weeks. Transplant went very well. He got up, was walking around. It was a very long 20-hour procedure. However, when he woke up, he was pretty much back to himself. He was laughing, making jokes, and basically pushing through, exercising every day so he can get out of the hospital. I remember that day so vividly because I had wheeled him around in the wheelchair for so long, because he had struggled to do basically anything himself. I remember picking him up at the front of the hospital, and he got out the wheelchair without me coming to help him. And I just looked at him and I started crying, because it was at that moment that I realized that he had another fresh start to living life the way he had wanted to live his life. At that moment in 2017 is when we just hit the ground running. I wasn't working for 5 years, probably around 5 years. And we had went to Mexico, we had went to Canada, like Florida. We were just trying to live the best life that we possibly could with this second opportunity where he can do things on his own. In 2021, he started having flu-like symptoms, but at this time, COVID had came around, so they kept testing him for COVID, trying to see what was going on, why he couldn't breathe, why he kept coughing. Never once did they even think to maybe check his lungs to see if something was going on with his lungs. They just automatically assumed that it had to be COVID, even though 10 tests in, it said it was not, but they were thinking maybe he had it and just had, lingering symptoms, which we do know sometimes COVID leaves, which is coughing. Around May of 2021 is when we were both at the hospital. He still was declining. And then they finally told us that his lungs was going through chronic lung rejection again. They showed us the x-rays, and how it looks on an x-ray from pulmonary fibrosis is basically cloudiness in your lungs. It looks like your lungs are filled with just white. It's like white out, basically, is what it looks like. And we could vividly see that it had pretty much taken over most part of his lungs. At that time, we kind of got a little serious because we knew that having a second double lung transplant was very serious, because they would have to go back in and cut through the scar tissue from the first lung transplant. So once again, doctors are saying there's nothing else they can do. But Timothy, being a Marine and a fighter that he has always been since the day I met him, he suggested that he be put back on the list for a second double lung transplant, because one thing about Timothy, he was going to fight regardless of what. He was not going to give up. He was not just going to lay down and die. He was going to do whatever he had to do to survive. It was at that moment that we basically just sit down. He was in the hospital for probably 5 days, and we just went through everything as far as what did he want to take place if that second lung transplant didn't work. What did he want me to do? What did he want, life to look like if he wasn't here? And he just basically wanted me to tell his story. He wanted me to tell that the fight wasn't easy, but he did everything he possibly could to continue and to prolong his life as much as he possibly could. And so this is one reason why I wanted to tell his story, and to also raise awareness about pulmonary fibrosis, because without people becoming donors from 2017 to the time he passed in 2021, we wouldn't have had that time together. So I'm really big on advocating for us becoming donors, us giving life to someone else who may have a couple years to live or a couple hours. Like, we don't know how much time here we have on earth. In 2021, in September, he got the call again for a second surgery. But the one thing I remember too, going into this surgery, is that many times Timothy went to the hospital, he would have like luggage as if he was going and staying for a while. This particular time, he didn't want to take anything with him. He was like, no, once I come out the surgery, if I need anything, you could just go and get it, bring it back, and I'll be fine. That was strange to me, because I'm like, not the guy who wants matching pajama sets in the hospital, talking about he wasn't going to take a bag to the hospital. But I think he had pretty much come to grips and peace with whatever happens. He was just going to let it happen. He definitely believed in God. He definitely was a prayer warrior. He definitely had fought a very long fight that he was tired of, but he was willing to continue to fight for himself and to fight for those that he loved, to stay around and to stick around and to be as healthy as he possibly could. The next morning, they ended up performing the procedure, and finally they came out and they told me that he was just bleeding a lot because of the scar tissue that they had to cut through, and that they were trying to stop the bleeding. And so they went back in, they come back out, and they're basically like, hey, I don't think he's going to make it this time. I don't think he's going to survive this time. Me as a wife, knowing that A, my husband is a fighter, B, I haven't seen him in over 25 hours. I'm just like, can you just bring him out? Let him rest a little bit. I wanted to see his face. They brought him out. He rested for a while, but then they found a blood clot that they had to take him back in. And I'm just giving you a picture of what this second lung transplant looked like, because it was a procedure after procedure after procedure after procedure. Like, they literally tried to do everything that they possibly could in that time that he was there. Lungs was doing great, the new lungs. All of a sudden, after probably the 7th procedure, one of his lungs started collapsing, basically wouldn't work. I started Googling, like, can you actually live with one lung? I did find a couple things that said you could. So me as a wife, I'm like, we can do this. He can survive off this one lung. Like, he can make it. He's going to make it. He's going to be okay. In October of 2021, I ended up going home one night just to get some rest, to pray. And I got a call that morning saying that he had turned for the worse. Then when I got to the hospital, one of his surgeons who had been with Timothy for the last 15 years was there, and he was supposed to be off that day. And it was almost like I knew it then, like, okay, we were getting ready to have a real deep conversation about this. And he began to tell me that the second lung was starting to stop as well. It wasn't functioning as well. And he was pretty much drowning in his own fluids. Nothing was coming out with tubes. Everything was dry. Like, nothing was moving. It was just pretty much rejecting from the new lungs that he had received. I was asking God to just let me know when it was time to just let him go, because I will fight to the end for my husband. I would not let them take him off that ventilator. I wouldn't let him take them off of any of his machines. Like, I was willing to stick it out as long as he was still breathing. And it was at that moment visually when I saw him and what the doctor said what was going on, I knew at that point that he was suffering, that, you know, he was hanging on, but he was suffering. So I decided at that moment to let him go. To visually stand there in a hospital alone, because it was COVID time, nobody really could come. It was a struggle for me to watch them unplug my husband from all the machines that he had on him and literally hold his hand, because one thing about us and our love and our relationship and our vows is to death do us part. And to hold your spouse's hand, or any loved one, to be honest, and to literally watch them take their last breath, I think that really did something to me. Like, it took everything out of me to even watch that, to even be there for that. But even in that moment, I knew that I was making the right decision. At the beginning of that year, when we were talking about things that he wanted to do or wanted me to do, he literally looked at me and was like, I have done a lot. I've done a lot out of my 54 years, and I'm happy. I'm finally happy with where I'm at. I'm finally happy in my relationship. And I'm like, he is so content right now. So to know that he passed away and was happy, and felt like he had fulfilled a lot of his dreams and wasn't lacking for anything, that gives me peace still today, knowing that he died a very happy and satisfied man. And so when he passed away, I ended up in 2022 just leaving here, and I wanted to go to the place where we had decided that we had wanted to move to, because I had wanted to get some peace for myself. I had wanted to grieve. And when I went away, a lot of things started becoming clear to me on what my journey, what my next steps should be. And I started thinking about how many times he had went to the hospital, and I had to drive back and forth, hour, 2 hours away, because at first we were living in Saginaw, traveling to Ann Arbor. Then we moved to Farmington Hills and traveling to Ann Arbor. And I'm like, just like the gas and the food. And there was many times I had to stay in a hotel because they wouldn't let me stay with him. And just the financial burden that it gives to a family, that's what made me realize that this is way bigger than me, that I should start a foundation in his honor, to not only raise awareness for pulmonary fibrosis, but to also just let people know how vulnerable life is and to be donors. And so I wanted to create the Timothy D. Robinson Foundation to help other families, whether that's to just help them understand the disease, whether that's to help them to financially have a little relief, whether that's providing them with gas, lodging, food, whether they need clothing, because there's a lot of people that's fighting with this disease that live alone. In our foundation, I also have a phone number where some of them could call if they need love and support. So I just wanted everybody to understand that this disease is a very nasty disease, and the best way that I can tell you that he took care of himself was to exercise. I feel like exercise really gets us moving. It gets our lungs to functioning the way that they're supposed to function, and it helps fight against more and more sockets being closed in your lungs. The more you push in and out, the more you do your cardio, and watch your diets as well. One thing he did too was he went to a dietitian because there were certain foods that he ate that would trigger him to cough more. So really watch what you are putting into your body and really watch on what some of your triggers can be. There's so many lung diseases, so just get checked if you feel like you are struggling to breathe. And just make sure you stay on top of your doctors. If you do not, we know our own bodies. If you do not feel well, go to somebody else, and hopefully those doctors or those nurses, or even talking to somebody else that you might know, can kind of pinpoint, hey, have them check this out. So to reach out to me, again, I'm Devonna Robinson, the CEO of Timothy D. Robinson Foundation. Our website is actually www.timothydrobinson.foundation. We have so much resources on there and information. If you would like to donate, that is on there. If you would like to connect with other families or friends, maybe in your community that I may know that is connected with our foundation, or even if you want resources from our other resources that we have, I'm able to connect you with those as well. We are not just a one-person foundation. We are connected to multiple all around the world, so I'm able to give resources if needed if you reach out to us. Annually, we do a fundraiser event where we raise awareness, and we do have other nonprofits that come that is connected with us, like American Lung Association and Gift of Life. If you get on our website, which is coming soon as far as the dates and all the information and the tickets for this upcoming event this November, it will all be on our website as well. Again, that's Devonna Robinson. I am the CEO of Timothy D. Robinson Foundation, and the website again is www.timothydrobinsonfoundation.org.